Hello and welcome to another episode of wjlive powered by the Western Journal. I'm Joey Chester, manager of publishing operations at the Western Journal. And I'm joined by Grant Atkinson, our star reporter here at the Western Journal. And we have a very special guest with us today. One of the most important U.S. Senate races in America this year is the Arizona Senate seat. So we're joined by Blake Masters. We are so excited to have you, Blake. We really like what you stand for. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Great to see you again.
So one thing I really want to ask you about, we've seen Republicans in Congress and in the Senate kind of diverge from what heartland America needs. We see them shipping off $40 billion to Ukraine. We see Bill Gates buying up farmland in America, big tech censorship. They're not doing anything. And so I want to hear from you. What is your brand of conservatism? What is conservatism in your eyes?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. There's so many different directions you could take it. There's the more historical, philosophical direction, and I'm very sympathetic to that. Obviously, I still believe in our founding design, in our Constitution and separation of powers and all those principles that the founders baked in. I literally think that system of government, and we've strayed from it so much, unfortunately. But I think that system, as they designed it, was divinely inspired. I think it works. I think wanting to respect it and follow it, that's conservative. That's American conservatism. That's where it began, right? But I think a lot of conservatives today, they just pay those principles lip service. They talk a lot about, the Constitution, and they're unwilling to actually do what's necessary to defend it. And, if you look at like Paul Ryan or Mitt Romney, a lot of their rhetoric, it's just empty. And the risk is modern conservatism, becomes something just like low taxes and you don't care about anything else. And I don't think that's what it is at all. America it's a country with a history and a people and a culture. And to me, if you want to conserve that and all the best things about it and project that into the future, if you want your children and grandchildren to grow up and live in a country when they're our age, that we recognize as America, that's conservative, right? Recognizing that this is a special and unique place, understanding why, and wanting to engage in politics that's going to preserve and protect that, that's conservative. And I think a lot of so-called conservatives today, they don't do it. And so, people call, me a member of the new right or whatever that means, or some people call me a, populist or a national conservative. And there's all these different labels. I don't really use any of them myself, although I don't mind them. But I'm interested in a conservatism that is not just going to play defense. I think the progressive left, they've taken over almost every institution in our society. I think they're hell-bent on upending everything that we hold dear about America. They want to fundamentally transform this place into something unrecognizable. And I think we need a new conservative politics that not only fights back, but takes back ground and makes America America again.
Yeah, Blake, thanks again so much for joining us. I think kind of on that same note, you talked a little bit about Republicans and how some of them have just been paying this a little bit of lip service, but not really doing the actions. Democrats as well, obviously, shifting so far to the left, they're alienating a lot of their base. How do you think that Republicans like you can sort of capitalize on that without compromising any sort of values or without engaging in, unnecessary attacks or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I don't think we should just attack people for no reason, but I think the time for being Mr. Nice Guy is over. I think this election, 2022, it's a existential election. If we lose, certainly if we let the Democrats retain power, I think it's game over. If we win, but get the wrong Republicans in office, that's just a recipe for losing a little bit more slowly. And so I think, I'm running as bold as possible a campaign. I'm willing to certainly blame the progressive left for so much of the dysfunction that we see, because I think they drive it. I think they're pushing us into a really dark place. But I'm equally comfortable blasting more establishment Republicans, rhinos, some people call them, right? Republicans light, who only want to play defense because it's that weak-willed republicanism, right? That almost fake conservatism that has led us to this place. It's allowed it to happen. And so I think in some real sense, almost the whole ruling class or the establishment or the elite or whatever you want to call it, but the people in charge in this country have failed, even if they're technically on the right side of the aisle. And so I think it's time for a new politics that understands the gravity of the situation, and it can't come any later. Like right now is the time where we take back this country. And if we don't do it in 2022 and 2024, I sincerely fear it will be too late.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I saw recently you said America is on track to become a third world country. And I completely agree with you. It's terrifying. And so one of my favorite messages that you have is talking about how we need to get back to being able to raise a family on one income. You know, families are the heart of America. America cannot exist as it's intended to without strong families. So how do you think we can get back to, what can you do to help us get back to being able to support families on one income in America?
Yeah, a couple things concretely, but just first abstractly, take a moment to be astonished that in 2022, articulating that is somehow really controversial. Like, you would think that all politicians, whether you're right or left, would say, like, yeah, they'd acknowledge. Obviously, it's a good goal to be able to raise a family on one single income. And, let's debate. Do my policies make that happen? Or, do your left-wing policies make that happen? But they don't do that. The left hates it because they think it's sexist somehow, because they want everybody to be so equal that everybody's just got to go and work two jobs in the market, and they don't like the family. And so I think they want people to substitute lots of economic activity for the traditional activity of just having a family and spending time with them and raising your children and all that. But the right doesn't really talk about it either. And that's why it's bizarre that there was this opportunity for me to say what everybody really wants. Like, people just want to have families. They want to be, have a rewarding career if they want to, or if they need to. They want to be able to worship in peace and figure out the meaning of it all, without the government just breathing down their necks and taking away their liberties. That seems obvious to me, but most politicians don't talk that way. So I'll make that meta point. But concretely, I think there's a lot of things we can do. You used to be able to raise a family on one single middle-class income in this country. And after decades of globalization and inflation, you can't really do it anymore. And so one obvious point is, globalization, just unlimited capital flows, unlimited immigration. This stuff really does have a depressing effect on so many Americans' wages. So just on the immigration front, Bernie Sanders used to be able to admit that illegal immigration depressed wages for working class Americans, which is just demonstrably true. That's a true economic fact. And Bernie Sanders doesn't say that anymore, right? Because the left has gone so thoroughly woke that now they're just open borders. They don't even pretend to care about the American working class anymore. They want to substitute, bring in all these millions of people to depress working class wages. Well, the correct amount of illegal immigration, of course, is zero, right? We should have none of it. And one of the best assets that a working class person in America has is monopolistic access to America's labor market, right? You want to be competing against the people in your town, maybe the people in your region, but not 7 billion people worldwide. And so illegal immigration should be zero. Legal immigration, I think we need some legal immigration, right? But I want immigrants to come here who are so unique and exceptionally skilled that they're going to start businesses and put Americans to work, or they're going to do some job that's not going to displace an American worker, right? And so if we retool our legal immigration system to truly get the best and the brightest, but not to just en masse replace middle-class American jobs, all of a sudden, I think there's upward pressure and people start making more money. So that's the immigration component. And then what about just making stuff here at home, right? For decades, we've been outsourcing. And then turns out the COVID supply chain crisis highlighted this is a really bad idea. It made economic sense in some narrow sense to send all the semiconductor manufacturing over to Southeast Asia, from Silicon Valley. That's why it's called Silicon Valley. right? We invented computer chips there in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, but we took all that productive industrial capacity, we shipped it off to Southeast Asia to save a buck. Turns out that was a giant mistake, right? It's economically important to be able to make things in your own country. I'm not saying trade is all bad. You got to have some trade, but you got to be able to produce at least the basics, right? Food, energy, computer chips, antibiotics, medicines. We got to be able to produce that stuff here at home. And so, yeah, I want some sort of reindustrialization, some industrial policy that says, hi, this is a matter of economic security. This is a matter of national security. We need to be able to make this stuff here at home. Well, if you do that, all of a sudden there's a lot more jobs for people, right? We want to be training people to do high skill work here in America and not just outsource it all to Vietnam or China or even Taiwan.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think kind of on the same same train of thought as that, I want to bring up a tweet that you sent recently. Kind of
Oh boy!
about it's nothing too bad, nothing too bad. Don't worry. But it's just talking about this concept of the family and of Americans, being able to produce things here. And so I'll just go ahead and read it. It said, "Quote: BlackRock buying up houses, China and Bill Gates buying up farmland. That is not a good future, my friends." I think both of us here totally agree with that. So it's definitely not any sort of attack on you or anything. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on kind of that tweet. Kind of if you could expand on it, and then why it's important, for us to have these houses and farmland and produce these things in America. You touched on it a little bit with that answer, but if you could just expand a little.
Yeah, totally. Well, historically, at least, middle class, like the path to the middle class has been home ownership. And there's something economically important about that. I think there's something almost spiritually is probably the wrong word, but there's something very important about, it's very American, this idea that you can own a piece of property and you own it. The government doesn't own it. A landlord doesn't own it. Obviously, there's a place for landlords and whatnot, but someone being able to work hard and save and, maybe get a mortgage, if not buy the place outright, and you own your piece of property in a family house that you can raise a family in. That's very important. And of course, it's historically been a good way to build home equity. And that's the path to the middle class and a stable retirement. And it just seems now that all these forces of globalization, whether it's China, whether it's BlackRock, whether it's these transnational governance institutions like the World Economic Forum, it seems, and the media is kind of doing all their bidding. You see these seemingly coordinated headlines about how great renting is, right? Home ownership, it turns out, is a drag. You want to be a renter. You want to own nothing and you'll be happy. It really seems like we're being bombarded with this narrative. And my pattern recognition on that is like, hey, something's going on here. And I really dislike it. I think it disempowers people. I'm a millennial, sort of an older millennial. I'm 35, and I went to Stanford and Stanford Law School. They're supposed to be like really good schools. Well, most of my peers who went even to Stanford Law School, and now in my age cohorts, they're probably 34, 36 years old in between there. Most of them are not married. Most of them do not have children. Maybe they've even convinced themselves they don't want children, although I think secretly they tell you, no, they do. They just feel like they're not on track, right? And most don't feel like they're ever going to be able to afford a home, which is really crazy. It's this startling inversion of the American dream. And so I have a huge problem with that and a society where even if you go against the culture and you get married and you save and you want to have a family, okay, now it's time to buy a house. Well, oops, even if you offered full cash, there's someone from China, someone from California, or maybe it's BlackRock, a multi-trillion-dollar asset manager, coming in to offer $150,000 over asking, all cash, and they're going to own the housing stock instead of normal hardworking Americans that are supposed to save and have a place to put down roots. I think that's really dystopian. And so I think it's a problem to get out ahead of now, because you want people to be able to own their property, take pride in where they live. And that's just, it seems very American to me, and it seems like we're losing it.
So, Blake, what can you do as a senator to help stop companies like BlackRock from buying up all these single-family houses? I just saw in Florida, there was a headline, an entire neighborhood got bought out by one of these companies, and it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
An entire neighborhood eaten up
Yeah.
by one of these big housing companies. So what can you do?
Well, the first thing you can do, I think it's easier with respect to foreign ownership. You can just say, no Chinese nationals are going to buy, whatever the menu is, single family homes or large tracts of farmland. I don't think Chinese nationals should be able to own U.S. agribusiness, or probably so many different kinds of U.S. corporations, right? With BlackRock, I think, you study the problem. The pushback is always like, oh, BlackRock, Blackstone, whatever. They don't own that much of the U.S. Single family housing stock. They probably own a little bit more of the multifamily units, but I think the stuff is still pretty distributed, and so people say, oh, it's not really a problem. And I say not yet, right? It seems like these are relatively new investment theses and new investment strategies coming out of these multi-trillion-dollar asset managers, but they're telling us where they want to go. They're demonstrating intent to acquire all this, and I think it drive prices up, lock people out. So I think it's a problem to get ahead of right now, and it's something that we can investigate. We can have the appropriate committee in the Senate actually study this. Right, it's something that I want to learn more about. I know there's a problem. I don't know all the details about the problem, so I want to learn more about it. And then if there's legislation to be crafted, I want to do that and then whip the votes. But it may be so simple as saying, hi, we want to be pro-business, and we're not going to tell, small, medium, even most big businesses what they're allowed to do. But if you have trillions of dollars under asset management, we might limit the amount of single family homes you can buy. We may have to do that. I'm okay with that if it's going to prevent some much, much greater harm. And so we just have to study it and get real about the problem. And I think that's why you want people like me in the U.S. Senate. I'm not saying that's an easy solution, but I'm pretty sure we do need a solution, because I'm pretty sure there's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to transition a little bit. You've been talking about, obviously, America first. That's kind of your position, and I think that we both here agree with that. With the Western Journal, want to put America first as well. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of examples of that not happening recently, and I think the most high-profile one this week has been, the $40 million aid package to Ukraine, which I believe over 150 Republicans voted for in the House. I just wanted to ask you kind of how you feel about that, how you feel about Republicans approving this sort of massive spending to other countries, and yet, here we are having, plenty of issues with supply chain and things like that in our own country.
Yeah, I think it's bad. I think it was a giant mistake. I think it shows how out of touch DC is from normal people. When I go around talking to voters in Arizona, they're just like, Blake, what are these people thinking? Like $40 billion to Ukraine. Remember, we already sent money to Ukraine. Like in March, we sent $13.6 billion. That's a lot of money. $40 billion for Ukraine. And they attack you if you oppose it. They call you pro-Putin. They say, oh, you're heartless. And it's like, no, I'm actually pretty anti-Putin. I think he's not a good guy. I've condemned, the invasion. I think it's murderous and bad. And I applaud Ukrainian people, if they want to fight back. And I think they've shown some resolve. That's great. And it's also true that Ukraine is not a formal ally to the United States. This is literally not our war. Although if we're sending $40 billion in to wage this proxy war with Russia, the risk, of course, is it escalates and it does become our war. And all of a sudden, NATO could be at war with Russia, which means the United States is at war with Russia, and nuclear power is going at it. That's World War III. That's worth avoiding. Okay. And it doesn't make you pro-Putin to say it. It just makes you honest and paying attention. I think we should be trying to get a ceasefire in Ukraine. We should be doing everything we can to de-escalate, but not just pour fuel on it. And just as a matter of prioritization, right? First of all, it's not like we have $40 billion. It's not like it's just, we have this money. It's a surplus. What should we do with it? And we don't have it, right? And so they're going to print money, and it's going to cause more and more inflation. That's just what happens. And Americans are already suffering. $40 billion for Ukraine, but they wanted to tell us that $8 billion to secure the southern border with Mexico, to build the wall. That was too expensive, right? And so it's this America last policy. You've got literally, there's not enough baby formula on grocery store shelves across this country because the Biden regime is just incompetent. but they want to send $40 billion to Ukraine, right? And so it just feels like it's spitting in the face of every hardworking American, of every American who's struggling right now. They're going to tax us. They're going to spend money and inflate our savings away to go fight a proxy war halfway around the world. I don't think it makes a lot of sense.
Why do you think it is that the Democrats, Joe Biden, the Biden administration, they can't understand a basic point that you just made, which is that when you print more money and you just keep giving people money that's just artificially injected into the economy, that's going to contribute to inflation? Do they not understand this basic principle? It seems like
it's so weird, like who knows if they understand it, and they just, they want to spend the newly created money. And so they just, but it's so funny to see what they do say. My opponent in Arizona, Mark Kelly, the Democrat incumbent, he's just been using Elizabeth Warren's line about inflation. It has no monetary cause, they want to tell you. Instead, it's all the greedy businessmen get together at the same time and just decide to raise prices. And it's just, I think they think that people are really stupid, but people are not stupid. People understand this very, very commonsensical principle that if you got the same amount of goods out there, and all of a sudden you're just going to print money, and you've got way more money chasing the same amount of goods, prices are going to rise. Your money is becoming made worthless by the printing press. And you got to be an economist not to realize that. It's hard to know what the Dems understand and what they're just lying about. My opponent in Arizona, incumbent Democrat Mark Kelly, he's been saying what Elizabeth Warren says to explain inflation. They say it has no monetary cause, nothing to do with all this money that we're printing. He says it's because all the greedy businessmen decide to get together and hike prices at the same time, which I think nobody buys. Like, that is just stupid. I think they think that normal people are stupid, but people are actually not stupid. People are very able to understand that when you print trillions of dollars, I think we printed $6 trillion in just like the last year or the last 18 months, that's going to cause inflation. And so the Democrats, they caused this crisis. Everybody knows it. And they can try to gaslight, they can try to lie their way around it, but everybody knows it. It's just super clear. You print that much money that quickly, it's going to dilute the value of the money. Prices are going to go up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Biden administration has thought for since January of 2021 that Americans are stupid. So I want to ask you, we have an invasion at the southern border. Inflation is out of control. Gas prices are at record highs. Baby formula is being sent to illegal immigrants instead of, to grocery store shelves. There's babies starving in America. Joe Biden has blood on his hands from Afghanistan. Do you think Biden has done enough to deserve impeachment?
I do. Just at the southern border alone, what he's done at the southern border alone is enough. He held up his hand and the other hand was on a Bible, and he swore to faithfully defend and execute the laws of the United States, right? To defend the U.S. Constitution. And it's not like he's trying. It would be bad enough if he were trying hard and failing, right? The consequences of just failure would be bad enough, but they're not even trying. He wants it this way. We've already got federal laws that say illegal immigration is zero, and that task the government with policing the border and making sure that people aren't coming here illegally. And Biden is willfully flouting those laws every single day. So he's presiding over dozens of thousands of federal crimes every day. And I think for that reason alone, he's shown he's unfit to be commander-in-chief. I consider that a high crime and misdemeanor. He violated his oath of office, and I expect the House will impeach him when we take power in November.
Great. Have you thought about what the first piece of legislation will be that you'll propose if you are elected to the Senate?
Yeah, package to seal the border.
Great.
We absolutely need that. We know what that looks like. It means building Trump's wall, finishing Trump's wall. So much of it is already built. We just have to finish it. It means tripling at least the size of the Border Patrol. It means giving those guys all the tools they need, including technology. Unlike my competitors in my race, I actually understand technology. And I know we need to use it to help lock down that border. I want eyes and ears on every inch of the southern border so that we can help drive crossings down to zero. I'm talking infrared cameras, thermal imaging, the works. The frustrating thing is we can get that through the House. We can get that through the Senate. And Biden, of course, isn't going to sign it. We won't have a 2/3 majority to overrule him. And so that's going to be frustrating. But we have to craft the right legislation now and be ready to go in January 2025 when we once again inaugurate a strong Republican president. It'll be President Trump if he chooses to run. So the question is, you can't get legislation passed as soon as we take the Congress back because you'll have Biden or Harris or whatever in the White House. And so the question is, can you do anything? And the answer is yes. We can investigate people, we can set up the right legislation, but even concretely in terms of securing the border, I won't vote to fund Biden's Department of Homeland Security unless and until there are guarantees in that bill that he's going to restart border wall construction. Right? We can play hardball too. You know how the Democrats are always threatening to shut down the government. You know, they say Republicans sign this horrible legislation, and if you don't, we're going to blame you for the government shutdown. Well, it's like two can play that game. And when we have the Congress, we have the leverage. And Biden won't get a single damn thing that he wants unless and until he takes steps to secure the southern border. We can play hardball too.
I want to ask you about the race specifically in Arizona, some of the polling that's come out. You are mostly polling in about third place, Brnovich and Lehman doing a little bit better in the polls. I wanted to ask you, obviously, there's still a lot of time between now and the election. What is your plan in order to improve that position as we get closer to the election?
You can call it third place, although it's like the latest Trafalgar poll was 24, 24, 19. Right. And the margin of error is like 3 or 4. So that's almost a statistical tie. Kerry Lake's latest internal poll from Signal had it in a tie. 19 Burno, 19 Lehman, 19 myself. So whether I'm just within striking distance of winning right now, or whether I'm literally tied, it is neck and neck. It's a 3-man race. I think Brnovich is actually going to finish third. I think it's going to come down to me and Lehman. And he's got a lot of money, but I've got the grassroots. I'm well-resourced myself. You know, President Trump has not weighed in and made an endorsement in this race yet. I'm optimistic that he'll choose me when he does that. But I'm just going to keep going. I'm outworking my opponents. I'm doing more grassroots events. I'm doing more media interviews. I'm crushing them in fundraising, whether it's $5, $50, $500, or even $5,000 at a time. I'm showing that I can attract excitement and investment into my campaign. And I'm the only one being bold and substantive on the messaging. And so I think the trajectory is looking good. I'm on track to win in August. But I would push back strongly against this narrative that, oh, I'm in some third place. Lehman just put out an attack ad against me today. He wants to have it both ways. He's saying Blake is in a distant third place. And then he's also spending money to attack me on television. That doesn't jive. He knows that I'm the threat. He knows I'm either even or right on his heels. And he knows I'm a better candidate. So he's getting desperate.
Yeah, you know when the attack ads start that you're starting to move in. So
here we go.
Awesome. So Blake, I think we'll get ready and wrap here, but I want to give you a chance. Is there any last message you have for Arizonans, to Americans right now before we sign off?
It would just be, you know, to have faith, to have hope. I know it's a really dark time right now. It's it pains me to say it, but we are living through a period of American decline. I knew Biden-Harris was going to be bad. You knew Biden-Harris was going to be bad. I'll be honest and say they've been a lot worse and a lot quicker, you know, than many of us would have guessed. But I know that we're right on the issues. People don't want to defund the police. People want more police, right? People know that a real country has a real border. Everybody knows it's not racist to require voter ID. It's just common sense, right? And so if we run the right candidates on this bold agenda, you know, I'm running on basically the 2016 MAGA America First agenda. If we're willing to take on the media and not care about what people call you, they'll call me the worst names under the, you know, doesn't matter. You just go through it. And I think with this attitude, where we're going to take back our country, we're going to play offense, we're not content to just play defense anymore, we can win. You know, we got to tighten up election integrity laws. We got to do better. But as long as we can get across that finish line with the right candidates in 22 and 24, I'm actually pretty optimistic. I think it's going to be hard to turn this ship around. But this is the greatest country that's ever existed in the history of the world. We have to fight for it. That's what I'm doing. And I think we're going to win.
Great. Blake, thank you so much for joining us today. To our viewers, thank you so much for watching. We are in a constant fight against big tech and the establishment media and the left. They hate us. They want to destroy us. So it's why it's so important for you guys to hear from folks like Blake Masters. It's why it's important to elect America First candidates to Congress to fight this. If you want to support the Western Journal further, please go to westernjournal.com/join. We would really appreciate that. What we do here is not cheap, but it's very important. We're a small family-owned company, so we would really appreciate your support. If you never want to miss great interviews like this, please like and subscribe to wjlive. When the little bell pops up, make sure you click it, and we will see you back here on Monday.